Hi, I'm Lois Losako, and I am the owner of La Caverna Fine Art Gallery in Mandala. I came to Malawi in 1990 with a Canadian NGO and enjoyed the country so much. After 4 years, I opened La Caverna. Not in this beautiful location, but in another one in Limby. The gallery was inspired by the lack of a National Arts Museum. And so in the absence of that, the idea for La Caverna originated wanting to provide a home for Malawi artists and artisan-based products. And over the years, the number of artists that we worked with grew, and the final result is what you see today. Okay, so when I see people walk into the gallery for the first time and look at so many different beautiful pieces of work, I always hope that they leave the gallery feeling better than when they walked into the gallery. And even if they don't spend anything in the gallery, that they find it's a beautiful experience for them. And the artists are encouraged by that. If I speak to the artists and say, oh, we had somebody who had never visited the gallery before, and they looked around and they went, I didn't know we had all these beautiful things in the country made by my friends and family and around the country, then that's a win for everybody. And hopefully that can translate into purchases down the road, particularly if they're students. Well, it's interesting, in 94 when I opened the gallery, that followed a 2-year volunteer position with the Wildlife and Environmental Society of Malawi. During those 2 years, I got to travel a lot around the country and meet a lot of different artists. And during that time, I realized that there was no artistic home for artists where their work was well represented and well displayed. So I started with 2 artists, Mishak Maungulu and David Kelly, out of a small gallery in Limby, and worked from there and visited so many different companies in Malawi, or in Blantyre in particular, encouraging them to purchase and celebrate Malawi artwork and the beautiful paintings that we had. So from those 2 artists, it grew, and we had many other artists represented in the gallery. One of the things about supporting the local artists was there was a very large disconnect between what the artist's work was the true value of and what people were paying for the artwork. So sometimes the artists were making more money than they should, but too often than not, the artists were not being remunerated fairly for their beautiful creations. So I tried to provide a fair industry standard. And the gallery has always operated on a social welfare system, whereas if we bring artworks into the gallery on consignment and nothing is sold during a period of time, then the gallery picks one of those pieces at least and then chooses to purchase it, frame it, and carry on. So the artist, the goal is that they would have a regular source of income coming in, not one painting 1 month or 10 the next and then nothing for the next year. So they can really concentrate on their craft and develop their skill. That's a great story. David was introduced to me in the late 90s, so very, very early on, over 30 years ago. And David Matoto, like many of our other artists, Aaron Banda, Brian Hara, Samson Namalomba, and so many others, we worked together for not years but decades, and collaborated on many different projects. One of David's strengths was his ability to create very detailed and elaborate murals. We were approached by Unilever many years ago if we would actually create a special mural for them that incorporated some of their agricultural products. David's murals were market scene based. Rural communities, they were either urban or rural. Many of them you see in Durandi, you see Sochi in the background. And so these collaborations of murals were researched and completed and sought after. So in addition to Unilever over the years, there was Lafarge, more recently First Capital Bank, Wellcome Trust, Total Malawi, many other companies had the privilege of having David work on murals that are 2 meters by 1 meter in size. And if you actually want to see a piece of his work, you can view that at Ryals Hotel behind reception. David is also a great example of how we got to know the families of artists. So their wives, their kids would come and visit the galleries and really understood and begin to understand that fine art is a profession. It's not a hobby. It's a skill, a talent that has absolute value and worth. So La Caverna has a policy of zero wastage, and I believe that that resources should always be well used. That's kind of a little bit about how I am. But also when we started to add value to the artwork by doing world-class framing, as you see around the gallery. The framer that came to teach, we brought him we imported the equipment to do our professional framing, and also brought instructors in to train our framers here. Our last framer actually retired a few years ago, so many of our employees who are with us stay with us until they retire. So we're very much a family on that side. But with regards to the zero waste policy, most picture framers in particular end up not surviving financially because they do not manage their resources and they waste. So the rule for framing is a maximum of 10% wastage. If you waste any more than that, and I think that's pretty much an industry standard. So that applies to everything from our picture framing to utilizing stationery in the office, to making sure that you edit on screen before you print out, to do your sketches and your designs. In our kitchen setup, we compost. We buy locally and close wherever possible. The culinary side means that when we design our menus, we use our locally harvested food process, so we don't have to worry about things like green miles. We don't want to contribute to environmental issues. We want to set a good example, and very simple practices that we both apply here, and like composting, you can take those skills home. And we use, wherever possible, we try to use things that are environmentally friendly. So cleaning materials are very simple. We use a lot of not harmful chemicals. Our vegetables that we grow, our lettuce, they are all pesticide free and organically grown as much as possible. With the carvings, the offcut of the carvings are used into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. So the offcuts from producing a very large piece, which is sustainably harvested, the offcuts and the chips might be done and used to create beautiful, fine little earrings as well. The story behind the cafe is almost a mirror image of the gallery. We wanted to market and promote fine art and artisan-based products, so a natural extension of that was to market and promote Malawian agricultural-based products. And one of the things that our local products have here with Italian cuisine is fresh and simple. So you can take very simple ingredients like flour and water in the case of Italian cuisine with tomatoes and fresh basil, which we pick here, and create a beautiful dish of pasta. So simple and fresh and flavorful with natural ingredients are one of the things that I have always loved about Italian cuisine. And then I married Malawian Italian, and so it was just very natural to kind of carry on with a world-winning theme that we find all over the world. So years ago, as we realized that our wood resources were becoming more and more scarce, it was important that the carvings that we encouraged by acquiring for the gallery were of the highest quality possible, so that we paid the artists for their skill, not just saying, all right, this is okay, we'll give you a certain amount for it, but if you bring me a better piece, I'll give you more money for the piece. We wanted to encourage the highest quality skill that artist was able to produce. But over the decades, all our artists have just grown old and passed on, many of them. So we started acquiring these historic pieces to have, so that, again, because we don't have a museum of these historic vintage curios, we can actually bring them in and have them as part of our permanent collection in the gallery. And one of the additional benefits that I didn't realize at the time is that we could bring in younger carvers to come in and polish and care for and preserve the wood and repair it. And that way they actually got to know some of the older carvers and appreciate the quality of the woodwork, and then also earn an income by restoring and caring for the wood instead of just always trying to source new virgin wood. So it's just been a real win-win. We have a bigger collection, we have a historical collection, and we have another revenue stream for carvers. Well, you know, I never thought the time would pass so quickly, but since we opened the gallery in '94, we are now celebrating 30 years of fine art in Malawi through the work of La Caverna and the collaboration of generations of artists, which is amazing. I hope that this would be an inspiration, not just for future generations of artists, but for our communities as a whole, to embrace and encourage young artists and provide a cultural home. And I guess the big question I always ask myself is, what does the next generation want? What does the next generation need? How do they connect to fine art? How do they connect to the interpretation of culture and fine art? And that would be a great question that I hope can be embraced and answered, so that in 30 years' time, a place like this still exists. Well, the only thing that comes to my mind, and this is a regular thought, is what a privilege it has been to see, you know, generations of artists work together through 2 pandemics, through the ups and downs of economies. I value the support of so many local companies and international visitors visitors, and just what a privilege it has been to embrace fine art and encourage in whatever small way I've been able to contribute for 3 decades. And here's to more.